Hi, I'm Simon Kilmurry. I'm the executive producer of Rovina's Choice, which was just shortlisted for Best Documentary Short for the Academy Awards. And I'm very happy to be here with directors Annie Wong and Tom Jennings. Good to see you guys. How are you?
Good to see you, Simon.
Hey, Simon. Um, so so let's talk a little bit about the film. First of all, for those who don't know, tell us what is USAID? What does it do that people might not know about? Give us a little thumbnail sketch of it.
So USAID is and was the United States government's primary aid distributor. Established in 1961 by John F. Kennedy, and for 60 years it had a multiplicity of roles. What we were most interested in was its role in distributing uh, medicine and global health aid, and that's what we focused on in Ravina's Choice.
And obviously the USAID has been working globally, but you've chosen to focus in a particular part of the world. Tell us where the film takes place and what's the community that is being supported there.
Well, we decided to look at the global health arm of USAID, primarily because we are following Atul Gawande, who had been the former head of global health under Biden. And so he had great interest in going to Kenya because there was many programs that he had championed as well. And there's the world's largest refugee camp there called Kakuma, which is right on the border of South Sudan and Kenya. And it hosts over 300,000 refugees, and it's where, some of the most vulnerable populations are. And it's where USAID had a lot of implementing partners with a lot of, with like IRC, with World Food Program, and a lot of programs that were helping the refugees in that area. And we wanted to see what the impact of the cuts would be because it would be probably the most immediate there.
And I think, what a tool and both of you explore in the film is the kind of dramatic shutdown. And we're coming up on the first year anniversary, right, of the executive order that was signed on Inauguration Day in last year, 11 months ago. Um, what was the impact on the food distribution system to the people living in the camp when that order was signed?
It was it was devastating and immediate. The one of the most significant cuts that happened that was never really remediated was the cutoff of food through the World Food Program. The United States had been the primary sponsor of food distribution in Kakuma and in many other places too. But the when USAID was cut, one of the first things that happened was that this funding for food distribution was cut. And so when we were in Africa, we started seeing almost it seemed like a pandemic of malnutrition and starvation. And we were there a month and a half, 2 months after the cuts. And it was right as this, the most disastrous part of this was really taking hold, and we were seeing children dying. But it had happened, it had started almost instantaneously.
I one kind of last question about the context before we kind of talk a little bit more about the film. I think there's a lot of misconceptions about foreign aid, about, how much we're sending abroad, how much it costs. Why aren't we supporting people back here? But just give us a little additional information on just kind of what the budget is, kind of on a per citizen basis of what we have been spending on international aid like this.
Well, I mean, I think people really think that a lot of money goes to other countries, and it's like, why isn't it coming here? Well, it's less than 1% of our national budget, and that money serves a multiplicity of purposes. So it's not just, aiding people in, global health reasons, for, medications and food, but it really does create good partners around the world, and it gives goodwill, and what they call soft power. And it really does protect us. It protects us from disease. They've got people surveilling, um, outbreaks like Ebola. And it really keeps the country safe. And I don't know if people don't realize that that's what the role of foreign aid does. It really does protect this country. And it probably is maybe $22 a year per United States citizen, of what it costs in taxpayer money. So it's really, really small, that does a whole wealth of good.
So when you're on the ground in Kenya and in Kakuma and you're seeing the impacts of these cuts firsthand, you're with, as you mentioned, Atul Gawande, who's one of the executive producers of the film, and also, as you said, under Biden was a senior figure at USAID overseeing this work. Um, Tell us a little bit about how you decided how to approach telling what's a huge story and putting some humanity behind it, some human face towards the impact of this cut.
Well, Annie and I have been doing films for a long time together, and one of the motifs, one of the approaches that we take is to take a very macro topic and find a microcosmic way of telling the story. Um, and this one in particular, this story in particular, it's just too immense. The amount of suffering, the difficulty, the numbers, it's unimaginable. It's hard to imagine the numbers, to put your hands around it. So we knew that we had to have one person to represent all these numbers. And so that's what we were looking for, really. We went there very intentionally to try to find one person who could tell the story about the impact of the U.S. aid cuts, the foreign aid cuts. And that's what we set about doing in Kokomo. We looked and we found people who helped us out, who got us access. We found this clinic that was the primary clinic for malnutrition in Kokomo. And through an immense amount of generosity from the doctors there, um, we were able to talk to many, many people and find many different stories. And that's how we found Rovina.
And how did you're approaching Ravina in an extremely vulnerable time of her life. How did you approach her and explain what you're doing and build that trust with her so that she would share her story at a very heartbreaking time for her?
Mm. We approached everything very with a lot of sensitivity, cultural, linguistic sensitivity. We actually had people with us who were translating for us, and helped get us the access, people who were of the community. And they were instrumental in conveying what we were trying to do. It took a lot of time, actually, with Ravina. We had many conversations, and there's a distinct cultural barrier that was at play, and it's undeniable. And you have to just take time and try to answer every question they may have. And when they don't have questions, it's your responsibility to convey the meaning and the potential impact of what you're doing. So it's through many, many conversations and time. It just takes time. With Ravina, she was more, um, she was suffering, she was suffering at that time. And it was a very, like you say, a very vulnerable moment. And we had to approach it with caution and sensitivity. But from the moment that we first made contact with her, she seemed to understand exactly what it was that she wanted to say and wanted other people to understand what she had been going through or what she was going through. Um, and so she decided to say yes.
And Annie, maybe can you give us a little bit of an overview of the situation Ravina had been in prior to the USAID cuts and when you met her?
Well, Rovina had come with her children. I think she had about 4 or 5 children with her husband from South Sudan, and they were fleeing, um, you know, a country that's just constantly on the boiling point of just explosive violence and also famine. They had no means of food. So they had come to Kakuma, and she had brought also two other children with her, I believe, who are not her own. And in total, she had nine children. Um, Unfortunately, her husband, about maybe a year and a half ago, had gone back to South Sudan to try to find food and find means for the family, and had been killed. So Rovina is pretty much raising these children on her own and without any means. I mean, she has family there. I think there's a community there that, she counts as her family, but everyone is struggling. So it's not as if she can really lean on them either. So she's really a single mom trying to make do for her children. And so when the cuts happened, they were down to maybe a meal a day. And that was rice, maybe some beans. And there were often days that she didn't eat because she needed to feed her children.
Hmm. And the support the people there have been getting, and Ravina in particular, particularly around healthcare, is this one clinic, which is some distance away from the camp, right? Tell us about clinic number 7, which supports the residents of the camp and the work that they do to support the community.
Well, Clinic 7 is actually, as the number suggests, it's one of several clinics in Kakuma, and it's exceptional because it is the one place where malnutrition is treated, and it's kind of a state-of-the-art center of malnutrition for what it is. I mean, and that's because there's so much endemic malnutrition in the camp, even before the U.S. aid cuts. What was especially interesting to us, though, was how successful Clinic 7 had been in treating malnutrition over the past 10 years. They developed an amazing process where almost any child that came in was treatable, could survive malnutrition. They came with some very severe cases, but they know how to treat it. So the doctors there that we dealt with, Dr. Silamonte, who runs the entire clinic system, and Dr. Kefa, who runs that particular clinic, were the ones who opened their door to us, and they serve a population. I have 6 doctors serving a refugee population of 300,000. It's an immense obligation, and they are, I don't know, I hate the word saints, but they really are amazing people who've given their careers and their lives over to this work, and they've done it well. They've done it extremely well. Treatment of malnutrition in particular. So when the cuts came, the Clinic 7 was kind of ground zero of what was really happening, where the most dire things were happening, because the malnutrition that they were suddenly seeing was off the charts. It was in terms of numbers and in terms of severity that they had not seen before. And they were overwhelmed. They had staff cuts along with it, and it just cycled out of control.
Hmm. And they also had a program with community health workers trying tell us about their work assessing kids out in the community before they get to crisis point.
Right. They had probably over 250 community health workers, and these are people who are within the community who go around and really they're the front line. So they do an assessment house to house of, any kind of ailment, children have. And malnutrition is one of the things that they are able to spot pretty early and then refer to the hospital. And once the cuts came, those community health workers were all, you know, that program was just completely pulled back. And so you had no one out in the community seeing these problems. And that's what happened to Rovina. And it got to the point where, her child, Jane Sunday, was in such severe malnutrition. I mean, her skin was peeling off. And, people like that don't understand what that really looks like because you've never seen it. So they don't know what to do for their children. And that's when the clinic is, starting to get cases far gone.
And of course, Rovina then has to make a she takes baby Jane to the hospital, but then has to make a decision that no mother should ever have to make in terms of supporting her other children. I don't want to tell everyone the whole story because I want people to watch the movie because I think that's where the impact really comes in. But has has Rovina you've been in touch with her since you made the film.
Mhm.
Your team on the ground has been in touch with her. Tell us a little bit about how she's doing. Um, has she seen the film and what's her response?
Uh, yes, we are in touch through our colleague and producer on the ground, a refugee producer there named Yale Awad. And he's an amazing individual himself. He's in close contact with Ravina, so through him, we're able to stay in touch. Um, she did see the film, and she gathered all the children and people in the compound nearby, and they watched it. And I think she was overwhelmed by it. And she didn't understand, she said, how alone she really was at the time. Um, and she was really heartened to understand actually the statistics, strangely enough, like that she was not the only person. And she felt it was very it was very helpful to her to see that she was not alone. It helped her get over the sustaining grief that she still was working with. So that was a positive experience. I think the other thing that we've been wrestling with ourselves as filmmakers is, what do we do now that we've asked Ravina to open up her life for us and the world? And we feel fairly strongly that we do have a responsibility. And so when Yael Awad goes to visit with her, he's always taking supplies to her, and it's what's been really amazing to both of us is to see how just a little bit of that food can really change the lives of the children. They were a family, not just Jane Sunday. They were a family all in malnutrition, in severe malnutrition. And we've seen her kind of rebound, and we've seen the kids rebound just by simply providing some supplies to them.
But of course, there's a million other stories of other Rovinas
Yeah,
who are not getting that support, right?
it's
Yeah.
it's overwhelming. It's not even a drop in the bucket, man.
Looking forward, tell us both how you are have been using the film or using the film to get more attention to this situation. How else is this issue being covered? It feels like every day we are constantly being pulled off in another direction. But this is something that needs to stay top of mind. So what have you been doing? What are the plans moving forward?
Well, one of the reasons we wanted to do this short, and get this out early and get it out this year is just because of that news cycle where things are just happening so fast and everyone's a little overwhelmed with changes. And this was one piece of, what's been going on that we don't want people to forget. And overwhelmingly the response of people watching this, we keep hearing the words devastating and outrage. And, we don't, what can we do about this? I think, excuse me, one of the things that we want people to do is think about, well, what is it that we want? What kind of action do you want to take as a citizen? This is not meant to be an advocacy piece, but it is just to show, what's going on. And don't forget about this corner of our government and our way of operating as a society. What is it that we want as a society going forward? And are we okay with this?
Atul Gawande, who's been central to this making of this film, has written extensively and has appeared on media extensively. Um, I think he uses an analogy of a blast zone about um, what we will face coming up, and I think he explains that very well in his short essay in the New Yorker, which accompanied the publication of the film. Can you talk a little bit about that blast zone? What does that mean? What are the implications that we haven't seen yet, but will be coming down the pike here?
Sure. The blast zone starts with the destruction of USAID. That's the blast. And then the repercussions are the zone, the kind of the concentric circles coming outward from that. We documented the first circle, that the disruption of food and the consequential starvation and malnutrition deaths that accompanied it. So what happens next is, in some ways, not knowable, but statistically, it has been studied, and the subsequent zones of the blast are going to be hitting other diseases and TB and HIV and um, uh, malaria. And these are things that over a longer term are going to be successive areas of impact where the blast is going to happen. So people are projecting, millions of more deaths from this one decision to take down USAID. And it's not just that USAID was so effective. It's that the world really, strangely, and this is something I didn't know, really had come to rely on the United States government and USAID structurally. Like it had this global structure, like almost a safety net. And when that was pulled, all these, other elements of that safety net that were connected to it, disintegrated as well. And that has been just devastating. And so we're going to see, very likely going to see upwards of, some estimates have said, upwards of 8 to 10 million deaths just from this act of cutting USAID. That's the blast zone.
And we're already at 600,000, right?
600,000 and two-thirds of that are children. Yeah.
That's really appalling. Um, I want to thank you both for taking time to talk and also for making this film. I want to encourage people to go to newyorker.com and watch the film and read Atul's essay and then think about what you can do about this. So Tom, Annie, thank you so much. Good to see
Thanks,
you.
Jonathan.
I'm
Thanks.